Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Let's talk about the cold and the potential winter weather. There's a lot to get into, but we're going to start with my winter weather forecasting rules because we are now in that 3 to 5 day time frame. The storm timing and type are becoming more known. The timing is going to be late Tuesday into Wednesday, and the amounts or precip type, we don't know the amounts. That'll be more probably 1 to 3 days, and the timing will be more located and kind of into a finer tuned forecast. But it is trending more towards snow, which I'll talk more about as we get into this vlog. So let's start with the wider view. We've got a lot going on. We've got some cold rain today. It's kind of scattered about. Not a big deal. It's not going to wash out your weekend. But this is the Arctic front. So this is the leading edge of the really cold air. This arrives tomorrow, and that's why there's still rain chances tomorrow. And you're probably saying, Arctic front? What do you mean by Arctic front? Well, this is really, really cold air. I'm going to turn off the radar and satellite here, and we're going to throw up some surface temperatures just to give you a rough idea how very cold it is behind this front. You could see the air mass behind that Arctic front. Ooh, teens, yeah, maybe single digits. How about below zero? A lot of below zero temperatures, and this is going to be diving pretty much like this into the country. So that's going to set the stage for some really cold days. So regardless of what happens winter weather-wise, you really need to be hyper-focused on the cold. And the reason I'm putting out so much stuff here on a Saturday morning is it's the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Now is the time to prepare your home, your car, yourself for this cold weather that's heading our way, because you're not going to have time during the week next week once it gets here. So where is the system right now? Let's go back to the radar and satellite. I'll turn everything back on. So there's the Arctic front, but actually the little piece of energy we're watching is actually right in here that's going to dive south, and it's going to interact with the Arctic front. I expect the Arctic front to be somewhere in here, and this is kind of a unique storm because it's not going to wind up like a giant low pressure system. It's more going to be an Arctic front where moisture is going to ride up and over the Arctic front, which really complicates a lot of parts of this forecast, but I'll get more into that and I'll kind of explain why that's going to cause some issues. So let's dive into some of the forecast data. And in full disclosure, I'm going to show you a deterministic model. This is the European model. It's not what I'm buying completely into or the forecast, but it gives you a general sense of what's going on. I'll talk more about the ensembles, which is looking at the overall amounts and where we're going to see the biggest impacts. But I want to show you this because the European model has been the most consistent. Doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's been very consistent with the system. So couple things to notice on this map. The blue lines are the cold air. 540 line is the rain snow line. Notice how it dives deep into the south. And so as we get into Saturday, and really late Saturday, we start to notice, late Tuesday. I'm like all confused on what day of the week is. Late Tuesday, we start to see that system getting organized along the Gulf Coast. Now, what's going on here, it's really fascinating, is there's an Arctic boundary right here, right? And so what's happening is low pressure tries to form, but it's not cranking up. If the low pressure were to crank up big time and tighten up, you would see warm air getting pulled back to the northwest, which does two things. One, it kind of changes things to rain or snow closer to the system, but it also throws much more moisture into this cold air. But because of, you may hear me say this is flat, the system doesn't twist or wind up a little bit. It ends up being kind of a flatter system. So we'll go through the middle of the week and you can see the system. Here it comes right there, diving into the Gulf of Mexico across Florida. So let's back this up and pause it right here. So you can see the low pressure is actually down near Miami. That's really far south. So the low pressure system it's weak. It's 1,015 millibars. That's not really strong. But look at all the overrunning going on over the top of the Arctic air mass. So yeah, that means snow for most of inland areas, but there's going to be a band of super heavy snow and maybe sleet right along the coast, which is pretty rare. So this is a rare case where the further south and east you go, the higher the snow. Now, you're going to hear a lot about systems, and this is a trend we see with low pressure systems in the southeast in the winter. They tend to trend to the northwest, and this is very true because what happens is oftentimes these lows form closer to the coast. They get stronger as they get over the Gulf Stream like this, and what happens is this pool of warmer, humid air starts pushing the system to the northwest. It kind of backs up a little bit, and that's usually with a stronger system. The weaker the system, though, it actually stays a little further south. So that's why you can't get too caught up in like, this is definitely going to go northwest. Could it? Absolutely. But a weak system, and remember, we're talking about the weakness of the low pressure system. It's 1,015 millibars. That would keep it further south. And all the guidance, even though the GFS tried to come northwest from a really far offshore standpoint, they're all kind of in the same line of staying right there on the coast and then pushing out to sea where it becomes a stronger system. Now, a couple of flies in the ointment, depending on how cold this air mass is. If it's not as cold, actually, this is a weird thing to say. If this is not as cold and deep, we actually have heavier snow chances probably getting northwest as well. But the stronger this cold air mass is, the more likely it's going to stay to the southeast. And again, this is the European model. I can show you the GFS model just to give you some comparison notes here. I'm going to back this up a little bit. It's a very similar scenario. There it is. Now the low's in a different location, but you could see pretty much a coastal runner. The low is pretty far offshore. So again, there is some consistency here that I'm talking about. And just to give you some further clarification here, this is the chance of 1-inch snowfall from the GFS ensembles, not a deterministic run, 31 variations. So think about running 31 simulations of the Super Bowl and to see the outcome. And the majority of them are coming up with snow along the coast. That's the GFS. European model back up here, show you the same thing. It's a little more bullish. It's definitely stronger, but you could see where the 1-inch totals are the highest possibility. The probability of seeing 1 inch is around 50% or higher in that area. So that's an area we're watching. But notice back in the Charlotte area and west, there's still a chance of snow. It's just likely going to be less snow. And speaking of Charlotte, I briefly showed you this. I don't want to glance over it. So, I talk about ensembles. Look on the left here. You see the 51 versions of the model, and every one of them has a different outcome. Some still have 0. There's a few, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 51 have 0 snow. So that's a pretty high probability. And if you look at the mean down here, it's anywhere between 1 and 2 inches. I'm not going to get super specific, but 1 to 2 inches. GFS, kind of the same thing. The mean is around a half an inch, a little bit less. But all the ensembles, 31, look, it's 31 versions of this, 31 simulations of that model, and 51 of the other model are showing some amount of snow, just incredibly light. But here's the thing that's going to catch you off guard. Let's go to my snowfall map here. This is kind of what I'm thinking. We will see snow, but the heaviest snow is going to be likely along the coast. Now, could we see a little bit more of a mix down here? That's the thing you got to be careful of. If you're watching from the beaches going, yay, we're going to get snow, you got to be careful because any northwest shift, while it will probably keep the heavy snow a little bit further inland, maybe along I-95, that's probably going to bring ice into play. So big caveat. And the water is, I'm going to say it's warm, but it's well above freezing, right? The water temperatures near the coast are definitely going to be a factor because that could bring in some warmer air at the surface and change things. So along the coast, you got to be careful that you could see an icy mix here. But this is the probabilities of seeing 2 to 3 inches of snow or sleet. Look at this swath, 50% or higher along the coast, 30 to 50% in the dark green, and here in Charlotte, 10 to 30%. And again, this is not for snow in general, it's just for 2 to 3 inches. This is the probabilities we use for these totals. So this is the area I'm kind of watching right now. That's the potential track. It's Saturday, right? This is going to be Tuesday night into Wednesday. So there's still, all day today, all day Sunday, all day Monday, part of Tuesday. So 3.5 days before this really becomes a big deal. But I did want to show you one thing about, next week. It's going to be cold in the Charlotte area. So everybody will be like, yay, snow, snow. This is the bad part. Regardless of what falls, we could have a period of time, probably midnight, Monday morning, Sunday night, until maybe early Thursday. There could be a 75 to 85 consecutive hours below freezing. We might briefly get above freezing, but it would be like for an hour. And that's it. So that's a long stretch of freezing temperatures, and that's going to have a huge impact. So when I talk about this, I want you to focus on the impacts. Even if we get light snow in Charlotte, the temperatures will be in the teens and 20s. We'll be below freezing for 3 straight days almost. So whatever falls, it's not going to melt. It's going to stick immediately. A trace to an inch of snow in this type of cold Arctic air will cause huge issues. Slick roads, and no matter what, it's going to be brutally cold. So people, pipes, and pets, make sure all of those are protected heavily because we are going to have some major issues. So for that reason, we're going to have a legit chance of snow. The snow meter currently sits at a 3 right now because we have a legit chance of snow, but I want you to focus on the impacts. And to that end, I love this product. You've seen me share this a couple of times. I'm going to put my head up here in the corner. This is the likelihood of seeing moderate impacts from winter weather. And if you look carefully, I'm going to make this larger. How about let's do this so it's easier to read. Okay. Likelihood of impacts. So I'm going to slide this up just a little bit. Moderate impacts include expect disruptions to daily life, hazardous driving conditions, closures, and disruption to infrastructure are likely. So this is for Wednesday. You could see in the Charlotte area that the scale is at the bottom here. We're in that 20 to 30% range, 30 here, but look along the coast, 40 to 70% likelihood of impacts that are moderate. So that's pretty significant. I'm going to make the, whoops, I'm going to make this a little smaller so I can go back and show you this, but we'll go through time and I kind of show you the timeline of this. So as we go through time, this is going to be early Tuesday, going into Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday night is when things ramp up. The worst of this is Tuesday night, early Wednesday. Right there is Wednesday morning into the 1 o'clock hours, so 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we go into Wednesday night, 7 p.m., then 1 a.m. Thursday. And by Thursday, it's gone. So the peak of this is roughly right about in there. So if I were to show you that, that's the impact. So that's what I want you to focus on. Impact, impact, impact. The biggest thing I could tell you, it is going to be brutally cold. We have light snow chances, but in a rare event here, we have higher chances along the coast. This is the map I'll leave you with because I do expect snow and light, maybe flurries back in here in this area. Maybe some light, so think flurries, light snow, maybe some moderate to light snow, and then heavy burst of snow somewhere here, I-95 east. I will do updates over the next couple of days, but take this time over the weekend to disconnect all your pipes, your hoses outside, anything exposed. Make sure they're wrapped. Make sure they're insulated, disconnected. Cover those spigots outside. You don't drip outside spigots, by the way. I've seen a lot of people do that. Don't do that. Shut those off and cover them up. If you're going to drip, it's going to be inside faucets into your sink because you don't have good insulation. Make sure the crawl space is sealed off. Your attic is sealed and has good insulation for those pipes. Any pipes up in those areas could be exposed. And if you have any concerns at all, obviously think about dripping those pipes. Check your heating system. Make sure your car has adequate fuel and fluids. Make sure you're not putting water in the windshield washer fluid thing. That'll freeze and you'll spray it on your windshield. Make sure you have something a little more potent that won't freeze. And just in general, be ready. Look out for your pets, your neighbors, the elderly, and please, if you can, be very conscious of people that are unhoused in our area and in the mountains of North Carolina who are desperately seeking an area to stay warm and sheltered in this cold snap. I will post more updates probably later today, but I'll do another vlog tomorrow. We'll do a vlog every day, maybe twice a day as we get closer to this next week.